The war between humans and the Orialan Empire had lasted for 12 long years. It was a conflict written across the stars, fought on shattered moons and silent space stations. Both sides had lost millions, and the wounds of war had carved deep into the hearts of every being who lived through it. When the final peace summit was called on the neutral world of Valis Prime, the galaxy watched in silence. The Orialan delegation arrived in silver ships that gleamed like blades in the starlight. Leading them was Princess Lyria, the only daughter of the Orialan queen. She was young by her people's standards, yet her calm eyes carried the weight of generations. Her duty was to represent her empire, to make peace if peace could be made. But deep inside her heart she carried a different burden. She had once known Earth long ago, before the war began. Years earlier, her family had sent her as a student diplomat to live among humans, to learn their culture and ways. She had walked among them unnoticed, living under a human name. During that time she had met a boy from a quiet town near the mountains. He was simple, kind, and full of life. They had laughed together under the stars and promised to see the galaxy one day. When she was called home, she never saw him again. That memory was buried under duty and time. Now, years later, she stood in the grand hall of the Valis Accord station, her elegant armor shining under the lights. Her people stood behind her, silent and proud. Across the hall stood the human delegation, their uniforms sharp, their expressions unreadable. At the center of them was the man everyone whispered about, the human soldier who had ended the war. He was called Commander Rael. The name was spoken with both reverence and fear. He was the hero who had led the decisive strike on the Orialan fortress moon, forcing a surrender that ended the bloodshed. Yet he was not a man of boasting words or triumph. His face carried quiet scars, and his eyes were heavy with something deeper than victory. When Lyria's gaze met his across the chamber, something inside her stilled. There was something familiar in the way he stood, the way his eyes softened for a moment before turning away. But she pushed the thought aside. The galaxy was vast, and resemblance was not proof. The summit began. Words were exchanged in cautious tones. Every sentence was measured, every gesture restrained. Peace was fragile, like glass balanced on a blade. Lyria spoke on behalf of her people, her voice calm and strong, while Rael spoke for humanity with equal restraint. The first session ended without anger, which was already a victory. Later, in the quiet corridors of the station, Lyria walked alone, seeking a moment of silence. She paused by a large observation window where stars drifted like frozen sparks. The hum of the station filled the air. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Princess Lyria, said a low voice. She turned. It was Commander Rael. His armor gleamed faintly, and his face was half-shadowed by the light. Commander, she said, inclining her head slightly. I did not mean to startle you, he said softly. You did not, she replied. I was only watching the stars. They look different from here. He stepped beside her, his gaze following hers to the endless dark. They always do. Every world has its own sky. For a moment, silence lingered. Then Lyria spoke quietly. You fought well, Commander. Too well, perhaps. Rael did not answer right away. War isn't something to be proud of, he said at last. I fought because I had to, not because I wanted to. Lyria turned her eyes to him. That is rare for a soldier to admit. I am not sure I was ever meant to be one, he said. Before all this, I was just someone who fixed machines. I never thought I'd see the stars like this, not through smoke and fire. Her breath caught for a moment. The way he spoke, the tone, the gentle humor under the weariness, it stirred something long forgotten. She looked closer, her heart beginning to race. You fixed machines, she repeated softly. Where? On Earth, he said simply, near the mountains of Ridge. Her eyes widened. The name struck her like a memory reborn. Ridge. That was where she had lived as a student under her human name. She could still remember the cool air, the sound of rivers, and the laughter of the boy who had once promised to build her a starship from scrap metal. She stared at Rael. The features were older now, harder, shaped by war, but beneath the scars and shadows she saw him. "It can't be," she whispered. Rael turned toward her. "What is it?" Her voice trembled. "Did you ever know someone named Lyra?" Rael froze. His eyes widened, and for the first time since the summit began, the calm mask fell away. "Lyra," he repeated quietly. How do you know that name?" She drew a deep breath. "Because that was me," she said. "That was the name I used when I lived among your people." For a long moment he said nothing. The sounds of the station seemed to fade away. Then he whispered, almost disbelieving, "No, it can't be. You disappeared. Everyone said you went back to your world. I thought you were gone forever." "I was," she said softly. "Duty called me home. And then the war began." Rael looked down, his voice breaking slightly. "All this time I thought you were lost in the war. I never imagined you were the princess I was fighting against." Lyra felt a tear form, unbidden. "And I never imagined the soldier who ended the war was the boy I once called friend." They stood in silence, the stars glimmering beyond the glass. The years of pain and conflict seemed to blur, replaced by the memory of a distant friendship, once pure and simple. "I remember the night before you left," Rael said quietly. "You told me to never forget who I was, that no matter how dark the world became, to keep my heart open. I tried, Lyra, but war makes it hard to remember who you were." Lyra smiled faintly. "And yet, you ended it. That means the heart I knew still lives in you." He turned to her, the corners of his mouth softening. "Perhaps it does. But I wish we had met again under a different sky." "So do I," she whispered. The next day, the negotiations resumed. But something had changed. Where once there had been distance and suspicion, now there was understanding. Rael's words carried compassion, and Lyra's tone held trust. The delegates noticed, but did not understand why the air in the room felt lighter. When discussions turned tense, Rael would meet her eyes and she would calm the storm before it rose. Together they built bridges that others could not. Within days, a framework for peace was written, a treaty built not on victory, but on forgiveness. Yet, when the final document was signed, and the chamber echoed with applause, both of them knew their hearts were heavier than their smiles. Peace meant the end of war, but also the end of their time together. That evening, Lyra walked again to the same window, the one where truth had been revealed. Rael found her there once more. "So this is how it ends," he said softly. "It is how it begins," she replied. "For our people, at least." "And for us?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "We live on opposite sides of the stars, Rael. My place is with my people, and mine is with mine," he said. "I understand." But before he could turn away, she said gently, "Do you remember what you told me when we were young?" Smiled faintly. "That I'd build you a ship one day?" She nodded. "Perhaps one day you still will. A ship not for war but for peace." He looked at her for a long moment, then bowed his head slightly. "If that day comes, Princess, I'll be waiting." She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "And if that day comes, I'll be the first to board." Their eyes met, and for a brief, fragile moment time seemed to hold its breath. Then she turned and walked away, her silver cloak trailing behind her like moonlight. Rael watched her until she was gone, knowing that the memory of her would never fade. The treaty held. Years passed. The galaxy healed slowly, like a wound closing, after centuries of pain. Trade resumed, alliances formed, and hope returned. Commander Rael retired from the military, choosing a quiet life near the same mountains where it all began. He rebuilt his workshop, fixed machines again, and watched the stars at night, Sometimes, when the wind was right, he could almost hear her laughter carried from the past. One evening, as he stood outside, an unfamiliar hum filled the air. He looked up and saw a ship descending through the clouds. Its design was unlike anything from Earth. Elegant, curved, almost like art made of silver light. The ship landed softly in the meadow near his home. From it stepped a figure cloaked in shimmering white. The air around her seemed to glow faintly. When she removed her hood, he saw her face unchanged by time. "Liraya," he breathed. She smiled. "You once promised to show me the stars from your world. I thought it was time I saw them again." He took a step toward her, unable to hide his smile. "You came." "I kept my word," she said gently. "And I brought something." She held out a small silver emblem, the crest of the Orialan royal family. "It is not a weapon. It is a seal of friendship between our worlds. You will deliver it to your leaders, if you still wish to serve peace." He accepted it with both hands. Always. As they stood beneath the same sky where their story had begun, the stars above seemed brighter than ever before. The galaxy had once been divided by fear, but now it was united by a bond that no war could erase. And as the night deepened, two friends, one human, one alien, stood side by side, not as enemies or rulers, but as souls who had found each other again after a lifetime apart. The stars watched silently, carrying their story into the endless dark, where peace was no longer a dream, but a living truth.